Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Way is in Training. This is a podcast exploring how warriors should train and fight, as well as how they should live. We will talk about technique, but we'll also dive deep into fitness, mindset, and strategy. We will explore leadership and philosophy as well. So whether you are a young soldier, a veteran police officer, a responsible armed citizen, or simply someone looking for an authentic life, let's examine how the lessons of combat and preparation for it can help us fulfill our potential. Let's explore the way together and learn how the discipline of training can show us our true selves amidst the chaos of life. Welcome back. On this episode, I've got my friend Matt Rakestraw. I met Matt actually in one of my classes as a student a while back, and I've been watching his journey with particular interest ever since. He's trained with all the top guys, and he's become a really amazing shooter. But not just that, he's got a habit of writing at great length about the training he does and giving people insights and takeaways, which I think is both admirable and difficult to do well, and he does it very well. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. I think you guys will get a lot of good stuff out of this. Real quick, in case I didn't cover something important, Matt, why don't you give everybody an intro and tell them a little bit about yourself and kind of your training journey?
Thank you for the kind words. My name is Matt Rakestraw. I am a shooter and I'm also a writer, and I pride myself on both. You can find my writings on Gunpowder and Paper. It's Instagram/Facebook. It's just me, so if I don't get back to people's messages or friend requests, it's because I'm really busy. So my training journey started a while ago. I own guns ever since I graduated college and got a job, but I was actually I am kind of a nerd. I got a whole bunch of books. I actually have my camera stacked on a bunch of books here, but my entire life changed when I picked this up. This modern technique of the pistol, this beautiful thing which now belongs in a museum. This is by Gregory Boyce Morrison, and if you can read that, everybody knows what this book is. Essentially, it's a modern technique from Jeff Cooper. And that changed quite literally the entire course of my life, because after that, it's like, oh, I like guns. I'm an American. But then it's like, oh, I can kind of get good. That was around 2016, 2017-ish. And then I found other books like the good old Stress Fire book from Asada Yu, so on and so forth. And finally saved up enough money to take a class back in 2021 during the height of the pandemic. So, which was like a terrible time to get into guns. I remember lining up at the gun store just to buy a Glock 34. But ever since 2021, I've found a whole lot of different really cool teachers that have put me on a cool path, and that I have worked my absolute butt off to get at a place where I can shoot really well, and a place that I really like. One thing, though, that I really like to do is that I like to share what I learn with other people. So for classes that I really like and that I take really good notes in, I'll try to share them. I actually had to compile my notes today, and I have 823 words written, 106,000 words written for free. Just, you don't have to pay me. I don't have a Patreon, anything like that. And technically 336 pages, but pages are like how you format them, and almost that doesn't really count, right? And one thing that I've noticed, at least specifically in my writing, the first thing I wrote was Mag 40, but that was just the legal side, no really shooting side. But then second class was Scott Jedlinski's class. Yep, which put me on 100% the correct path. But one thing I did notice was my notes were like 20 pages long. And then they just been getting longer and longer and longer, because I'm finding a whole lot of nuance and really cool stuff from a lot of other teachers. That's like, I guess, a ramble to this, but that's a brief introduction to me and how it went from kind of like 80s, 90s stuff to like just incredibly good introduction to Red Dots from Scott, to, all the way from Gabe White to AJ and Tim, you, so on and so forth, to the shooter I am today, and hopefully the shooter I'll be tomorrow.
Are you still shooting a Beretta?
I am. Yeah.
It's a good gun. It's a nice
It,
gun. I like it.
oh, well, I mean, you're the one who actually recommended it to me. I don't know if you remember. You made a comment while we had that private class. And you said, if you said something like, if I was going to shoot carry optics, I'd shoot Beretta. It's like, okay. Um, and then I actually teach at Appleseed as well. And somebody left his green Beretta at the range. I picked it up. I'm like, wow, this hits my hands. And now, I got one. And then this beautiful 92 with however many thousands of rounds in it later. I love it, but I'm really enjoying the PX4. I'm on the PX4 gang ride so far. But yeah, probably should have said that. I typically shoot Berettas and double action, single actions now.
Have you, did I hook you up with my buddy Les Kismartani?
Not yet. I'd love to meet Les because
I'll do an intro because
yeah,
he is one of the Beretta guys for sure.
Yep, yeah. His I was this close in just buying his sights from Wilson Combat. He's like, oh, the Les sight. Why not? Let's see how good that is. But I need to go and get another Beretta because all my Berettas have dots on them because it's year of our Lord
2025. Yep.
Yep, the year of John Browning, right?
John Browning was a genius.
He was.
Hallowed be his name. So I really, first off, I've enjoyed having you in my classes, and we've trained together and other stuff, and I've always enjoyed shooting with you and training with you. But as somebody who's written a book, however, I'll leave it up to the audience to make quality judgments on how good it is. But it's a huge undertaking, and the amount of stuff you've taken and published for free is basically the length of a book, easily.
It's writing it's funny. Like I started my writing journey in college. I went to an engineering school, and like a part of me rebelled against math. I'm good at it, but I kind of hate it. So it's like I'll just write, and I got really, really good at writing. But because I am an engineer, I can take that and apply that to writing. And it's so cool just to see what people teach, why they teach it, and how they teach it, and more, and like in the order they teach it, record that, and then to have me compare that against a whole lot of threads which connect a whole bunch of really cool instructors together. Because a lot of the good guys are teaching effectively the same thing. And it's cool to see the nuances between everybody, but then how they differ. Have you ever done something called NaNoWriMo, or have you ever heard about NaNoWriMo? Okay, so NaNoWriMo stands for something November Writing Month, National November Writing Month. Where essentially, you write 40,000 words in 1 month. Just whatever, hopefully not all work no play makes Jack a dull boy. But I did that about 2 years ago, and I loved the idea of it. It was an absolute slog, though, especially on the last day where I had to write like 2,000 or 3,000 words. But once I figured I could get past that one day, like it was the last day too, I found, oh my God, I unlocked something, and I could write in depth and then analyze it and then edit it. I'm also the world's worst editor too.
I got to tell you, like, that was the hardest part of my book. The hardest part was not the writing. The writing took a while, but
yeah,
it wasn't difficult. It just took a while because I was fitting it in with everything else,
Yeah, like the way that your book is, it's like a series of almost vignettes where it's items that you learn. It's like, do this, 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 and this. And to have them flow together in your different contexts was probably really difficult to put together.
The editing and organizational piece of it was what was hard. The writing part came easy. I was like, I need something on this topic. And then I would sit down and I'd have a couple pages written on that topic. It was all stuff that I geeked out about talking about anyway. So that part was simple.
So here may be an interesting analogy. So like writing is easy, practicing is easy, editing or correct practice is hard.
Yes. Yeah, no, without a doubt. And the editing part, like the organizing was a little bit difficult compared to the writing. Trying to figure out how to make it flow, right? And then once I kind of had the sections organized, everything else kind of fell into place.
Yeah.
But then the editing piece was the most colossal pain. It was just horrible because it is so difficult to see your own grammatical missteps or your own typos. You know what I mean? Like it's just you already know what you wrote. So in your brain, you start skimming through it and not paying enough attention to detail.
Hmm.
There's a shooting analogy there too for
Yeah.
shooting matches.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, when it's good to be shooting subconsciously, but when you become so checked out that it's no longer being done as a correct process,
Hmm.
you get sloppy and you start making mistakes, you
Yeah.
know?
And then you go back and review the match footage or your print practice footage or your writing, and you're like, there's no way I made that like third grade grammatical error, right? And I'm not talking about like an Oxford comma. I'm like talking about misspelling stuff. And then you're like, there's I think there's a direct link to like writing because like subconsciously getting information from your head down to your hands. Same thing from I'm going to shoot this target from subconsciously from your head to your hands to shoot. And how to balance that mindfulness or the thinking about it in both contexts is it's pretty interesting because there's items where it's like if you have fiction, you have to craft a story, you have to do stuff. But for writing or like technical writing, you have to communicate effectively. But the shoot, it's I'm so far along, it's and I think you are as well. It's like just go shoot. But then how do you get people to that point? And that's a really fun thing to talk about. How do you like okay, just go shoot? And they're like, how? It's like just go shoot, which is not really an answer for them.
So have you ever read The Tao of Jeet Kune Do, Bruce
No,
Lee's
I'm not.
book? You should.
Okay.
It's as much philosophy in there as there is fighting in there, right?
Yeah.
But one of the things he said in that book that I really like, and he was talking about exactly what you're talking about.
Hmm.
He said that when I was a beginner, a punch was just a punch and a kick was just a kick. Then as I became better, a punch became so much more than just a punch and a kick became so much more than just a kick. Now that I've mastered it, a punch is just a punch and a kick is just a kick. And it's those that level of competence, right? So in the beginning, you're
Yeah.
subconsciously incompetent. You don't even know how bad you are. So yeah, you're just pointing the gun at things and pulling the trigger because you don't know how to do it right.
Yep.
And then you start to learn all the little things that it takes to do it right. And it's almost like almost overwhelming. And it becomes so much more than just looking through the sights and pulling the trigger.
Right.
But then once all that stuff gets internalized and becomes your body's way of holding the gun and moving the gun, now it's all just about sights and trigger again.
And there's so many pitfalls in that middle region where it's like people changing techniques, people changing guns, people focusing on minutia to the point that it doesn't matter anymore. Like, or like focusing on it's all grip or it's all vision or it's all trigger. Like it's no, it's everything all the time, all at once, without thinking about it.
Yeah.
And yeah,
No,
it's
and that's a good point too, because I like what you just said a lot because
mhm.
it kind of bugs me when somebody says, well, it's all the support hand grip. No,
Yeah,
yeah, a lot of it is the support hand grip, especially at speed, but it's not all the support hand grip. Or then you hear, well, it's all the trigger. Yes, but really no. I mean,
yes.
it is, but there's a lot more going on.
And it gets to a point where it's like here I'll tell you my vision anecdote. So for a while I chased this like vision bug. It's like okay, everything's vision, it has to be vision because I can rely on myself to press the trigger on the targets that I know with experience that I have. I'm not going to go shoot it's not all vision for a BA at 50 yards. I mean, I have to put a lot more mindfulness into that. But I chased down that rabbit hole for a while. And that's actually how I failed the fast coin because I put everything into vision and not enough into the trigger press. And it was to the point where it's like I didn't have the correct I didn't it's like a bank account. I didn't have the correct money in the bank account, right? It was all in like one investment. It wasn't in the other investment. Which is kind of funny because the fast coin is actually relatively easy. But and then I was like commenting on Tim Herron's his story, and I was like asking something about vision, and then he had a really good comment, and Tim can come across a little strong online. It's like it's not all vision. I'm like, huh. So I went back, did a lot more detail, and something really popped out in the inner game of tennis like 2 weeks ago when I was on workbook, and it was if you know where you're like the two most important thing in tennis is knowing where the ball is and where your racket head is, and you can know where your racket is by feeling it is. And for me, it's like, oh, I know where my sights are with my trigger, but if I know where my trigger is in the arc of its travel, not just feeling it. It's like you can feel anything that doesn't give you any feedback, but
Right.
feeling it in the context of its arc of its travel, and it's like, oh, then it has to be everything all at once, all at the same time, and it can't just be vision.
I think, and this is where it's frustrating, I know, for people on that middle ground that we're talking about, because there's so many things that it's easy to chase them at the exclusion of everything else when that's really not the answer. I think vision drives many aspects of your shooting. I think grip mitigates many things that occur when you're shooting fast.
Yes.
And I think trigger press ensures that your sights stay aligned. Like that's just the gist of it, right? Like that's all
Yeah.
of it right there. Like
Yeah.
it's really not, this doesn't mean it's easy, but it's really very simple.
Yeah.
It's just really hard.
It's shooting is the most simplest thing in the world. But my God, to do the most simplest thing in the world, you have to do everything, and while also not doing it.
Yeah.
Ah,
Not consciously trying to do it.
yeah.
I have always said that shooting is the most, I think I said this to you in the private lesson, that shooting is the most Zen thing there is.
Yeah, that's the tagline I use for for the notes I wrote for your class. Yeah,
Because
and it's so true.
the moment I try to force it or make it happen, it just falls apart every
Yeah,
time.
I I have a question for you too. So, and there's something that I saw in my own shooting, and then you mentioned in your Paul Sharp podcast like 2 3 weeks ago. It was
Okay.
where you said you're doing a lot of things in ace, and then with your trigger finger, like there's a point where it was almost subconsciously you saw that flick of the red dot,
Yeah.
right where it went to the target. I've experienced that before, and sometimes I shoot like that, but I don't know if I should, or because it's like I'm trusting my subconscious too much. Now, I kind of wanted you to elaborate more on that because it's so hard to do purposefully, but if you just let yourself do it,
What I found was really cool about it was that I wasn't doing it on purpose.
yeah,
I was just observing it happen. Right.
you know,
And it wasn't like the dot was getting corrected these huge amounts. It's more like it's on the edge of the plate than it's coming to the center of the plate,
goes right to the center. Yeah,
you know? And it was happening during the trigger press. And I wasn't intentionally delaying the trigger press or intentionally correcting the sight picture.
hmm
I was literally just shooting at speed and trying to see everything. And it was really like, I felt like I had this epiphany, like, you never truly arrive, but you have those moments where you feel like you've arrived a little bit. You've arrived at the next stop on the train tracks,
yes, yeah,
I had one of those where I was like, oh, this is really cool. My subconscious is making these corrections for me in real time, and I'm seeing fast enough to see them.
yes.
And that was the part I think I've been making these corrections for a long time, but I was seeing them.
But now you're seeing that your subconscious, yourself too, from that game of tennis, that guy's shooting in your head.
Yeah.
Now that you see what he's doing, you see a little bit more behind the magic curtain.
And I think that really matters because I'm a real big believer, like I said, in the Zen of shooting, right?
Yeah,
And then how people like Kabat Zen and like the other modern like Zen guys talk about the observer and how the observer is the part that's really you. And
yeah,
all that other noise inside the brain isn't really you.
yeah.
You're really that still point watching all the noise and listening to it.
Your thoughts are not yourself.
Yeah.
You're the person watching your thoughts, and you can choose to be who you are by picking them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like there's a real strong analogy there with what we're talking about, I think. Like, the shooter you are is that still point.
Yes.
And you really should just be observing the shooting happen. And sometimes that means you're observing everything happening correctly.
hmm
Sometimes it might mean like in training that you're going super fast. Like when I'm doing for like, I try not to use this term because I think it's a little too simplistic,
Okay.
but speed mode.
Yeah.
Everybody talks about speed mode, right?
Yeah.
My only criteria for success these days, and I stole this from a guy who stole it from Sauerland, so I can't take credit for it.
No.
But I had the concept before, but this is the first time I've heard like somebody formally say it, right? Is that when I'm pushing speed, my only metric for success is knowing where the sights were for every shot.
Just observing.
Doesn't have to be correct. I
Right.
can have a miss, I can have a delta, I can have a no shoot, because
Yep.
I'm going for speed. I'm pushing the
Yes.
speed. So, I mean, I guess there's two metrics for success. One is to continually go faster, obviously,
Yeah.
but that's a long-term metric. The immediate metric
Yeah.
is, am I able to see the sights in every shot or
That's
every
your
trigger press and dry fire?
that's your current process goal, with a end result goal is to go as just keep pushing speed as fast. Yeah. So
Right.
you're just watching to see what the red dot or the sights are doing under speed, and what happens happens. And if you could see it, great. Let's see if we can go a little bit faster and a little bit faster until you run ammo or you can't see anymore. So one thing, so for sights, I keep hearing interesting stuff where people say you can't push your vision. I found that to be absolutely unequivocally false.
Oh, you can definitely push your vision.
Yeah.
Who's saying that?
A couple of different guys.
But you
Which
don't have to name names. I'm just curious because I think, oh, here we go. I'm about to do it. I'm about to make this is all about.
yeah,
So, with the caveat that nothing is all about one thing,
right.
training for shooting is all about pushing the vision.
Yes. Yeah, your vision has to be razor sharp, aggressive katana vision, 100%.
And it's not visual acuity.
Mhm.
Like you can actually have pretty bad vision as far as visual acuity and
Right.
still shoot really well, especially at like USPSA distances, right?
Yeah.
It's about visual perception speed.
Yeah.
How quickly can my brain process the visual input correctly?
Yeah. And so not at all to talk about guns or anything like that, because we both know that it's not information. I was talking to my buddy, Ernest Langdon, about the PX4, and he said that, like, because of the rotating barrel and because of the compensator and other things, and not just because of technology, he can post vision with it. It's like, oh my God, I thought I was crazy doing that with that. And not to discuss about technology, but it's like I at times when everything comes together and there's that like shining light, I can see things at like the are more urgent splits, like 17s. That's not I can't stop it because that's at the time.
Yeah,
where,
that's a different issue. Yeah.
yeah, but I can see it happening. It's like, oh, and like just last week, I shot a 151 bill drill with my
Nice.
92. It was just blah, 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 blah. It was just I saw everything. I saw the three Charlies go pop pop pop. I mean, 3 Charlies, 3 Alphas, right? I'll take it at 151. But it's just, oh, that was awesome. Of course, I tried to recreate it and only got 1.6s and like maybe 184s, right? But it was just that observation, just, oh, I can see faster now.
And I think that's so important. And it's not just important from a pure shooting performance standpoint.
Mhm.
Like I know you're more defensive minded than competitive minded,
Right.
in general. And like I really am into competition, but I'm a defensive minded shooter at heart as well because of what I did for a living, right?
Mhm.
And what I found when I started shooting USPSA was still on the police department as an unintended benefit. I did not expect this, but I got better at doing CQB as a SWAT guy because of USPSA.
Mhm.
And it wasn't because they're similar, because really you move through a shoot house nothing like you move through a stage, right? The shooting, I mean, shooting is shooting. We're not
Right.
talking about that right now.
Right.
But I got better at the tactical side of it because I could see and process faster. So it opened up my awareness to more of what was going on in the environment and made me calmer is the wrong word because I don't think I wasn't calm before. But you know
Yeah.
what I'm getting at. Like
Yeah.
it made me more relaxed, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, and you're able to flow with it probably more.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and so where you're, and then you're the first person that I heard to talk about processing power and the connection between vision and processing, which is actually makes a lot of sense. And we both understand if your shooting skills are subconscious, especially for the relatively easy things of, I imagine CQP is not out to 25 yards.
Typically not. No.
Yeah, and I imagine that the shooting is probably not as difficult, I guess, the target wise. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that if you can do
The shooting piece is relatively simple compared to a difficult competition stage.
yeah, if you can do all that, then vision wise, are you just more aware? Are you more observant, or do you just use that processing power to be, like you said, not calmer, but um,
You have more bandwidth for other things,
yeah, okay,
is I think the best way to describe it.
okay,
You're not eating up bandwidth with trying to process fast, because you can process fast enough that your
hmm
brain has more bandwidth to handle decision making and the kind of mental side of awareness, not just the visual side.
yeah. So how how do you increase your processing speed? Is it with a lot of Calvin ball? Is it with like doing high level mathematics? How do students, or how do you increase your ability to just seeing faster? Just means shooting as fast as you can to the point where you don't recognize it, and then trying to see it. But for processing,
Um,
how do you do that?
for processing speed, that's not how I look at it.
Okay,
And actually I used to look at it that way for
okay,
like I said, for lack of a better term, speed mode in shooting.
yeah,
And I actually think I damaged my shooting to a degree, or
okay,
at least definitely slowed down my improvement by doing that.
okay,
Because I'm very aggressive by nature. I'm sure this
yeah,
comes as a shock to you, having spent time at my
incredible.
house. Yeah.
Yeah,
And that aggressiveness makes me go too far if I look at it that way.
okay,
I'm
aggressiveness with your mental choices while shooting, or just aggressiveness with your vision or trigger finger, or
all of the above,
okay, everything.
everything,
Okay,
right? It makes me push too far.
okay,
I'm no longer at the point where I can see the sights. I'm no
mhm.
longer at the point where I have any success rate to speak of. I'm just moving the gun as fast as I can and trying to hook it up. Right.
Okay. It's like blood for the blood god mode. You're just we're here rip and
Yeah.
tear. Okay, okay,
Yeah. And that I don't think is truly productive.
okay. Yeah, I agree.
For a variety of reasons, right? But I really do think that getting to the point where you can still see the sights for every shot, but you're moving as fast as you can do that,
hmm
that increases, I believe, the perception speed over time.
Okay.
And I've seen it. I mean, it's a sample of one, but I've seen it in myself. Like I
Yeah.
have seen as my times drop on a particular drill, but I can still see everything. It's not long before that time where I'm seeing everything but making mistakes becomes a time where I can hook it up at least a decent amount of time. And then that becomes the time where I can hook it up, the pace where I can hook it up
Yeah.
consistently. And I think that what I was doing wrong in the past by pushing too far was you have to, the observer has to be able to learn, right? The subconscious has to be able to be programmed.
Yes.
And if you're not bringing the data in, you're not learning.
If you're not being aware of what you are seeing and what you're feeling, you can't improve.
Exactly.
Anybody can just blast. You have
Yeah.
to be, if you don't see it, if you don't feel it, you don't know if it's what way you're doing wrong or what you're doing right.
You have no idea what you did wrong or right.
You just
And
blast
even if you hook it up and get lucky, you still don't know what you did
Yeah.
because you didn't do anything but wave the gun around and make a bunch of gun smoke and spent brass, and it just happened to put holes in the right places.
And then post on your Instagram, right? Hell yeah. Uh, Okay. So then how do people increase or better understand their awareness? How do you I hate to say become more aware because like it's forcing something, which is hard to do with awareness.
Yeah, you can't really make it. I would say this is going to sound very, very crystal wearing, tofu eating, West
No?
Coast leaning,
Yeah.
but a lot of that stuff has truth to it, right?
Yeah.
You literally have to just practice observing. Like after running a Blake drill, like, so we'll go back to ACE. We'll talk about that virtual setup, right?
Yeah.
I love the fact that I can ask myself where the hits were, and then a moment later they populate, because it's a great training tool for exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
How well did I observe what happened? How well did I see what the sights did, what
And
my
you
trigger press did to the gun?
you
Right.
measure against what it showed. Yes.
Yeah. So I like that a lot. Obviously, in live fire, you can do that with holes or lack of holes in the
Right.
targets. Conventional dry fire is kind of hard to do it, but the better you get at live fire, the better you get at doing it in conventional dry fire.
Yes.
As long as you're brutally honest with yourself.
Yeah. So I need to go get a MetaQuest 3 uh, because I tried Ace on the MetaQuest 2 and I found it the most frustrating thing. Like I tried it again the other day and I threw my controller down in frustration because the MetaQuest 2 was laggy. And it's like, who's this big, dumb, stupid idiot that's drawing my gun across the screen like this? And it's just for a lot of other people who don't have, I can shoot relatively fast splits. It's not a problem. But for me, it is this much off and it is unbelievably frustrating. But I really do like Ace. I think it'd help a whole group of people. For high performers who love it, get the MetaQuest 3. But I really like that idea where, like, when I was shooting it, I didn't have the whole vision thing autistically narrowed down to what I have now. um, I loved it, but now that like it's just this much off, and it's probably mine because probably me. I don't update the MetaQuest as much as I should. It was just
Well, they're
so.
probably not. So they're probably doing the iPhone thing where they're intentionally not updating the two correctly.
That might be it. And
so you don't buy a 3. I bet you that's what's going on.
Yeah, and it's just, and I don't like, that was my first thing in the VR besides my friend's Beat Saber from years ago, which doesn't even count. So I'm probably doing something wrong. I'm not very good at technology. I'll say that much.
I really like it. I mean, and it's not like you can do everything in conventional dry fire you do in there.
Right.
But it has moving targets.
Yes.
It has reactive stuff. The physics is all correct, and it gives you the feedback.
Yes.
So it's like a halfway point between conventional dry fire and live fire. And I'm sold on it. I really am, especially as the technology continues to improve. I mean, we train pilots and astronauts that way. Why wouldn't we train shooters that way?
Yeah, and it's the one thing that I really like about it is that everyone I know, I did introduce to a couple other people, their hands were tired, which means they're gripping the gun, which they don't do in dry fire. I really like it because you can introduce people to, like, hey, here's a USPSA classifier. This is the first time. You don't have to take the test for the first time on the range. So you can say, oh, this is what it looks like. Okay, shooter ready, stand by, beat. Oh, what was that? Versus, them freaking out a USPSA match. You get disqualified if you break the 180, just like at a USPSA match. The shooting, the targets on the move are excellent. The steel looks like steel and falls like steel. There's
if you double tap it, it falls faster.
Yeah. The reloads you can kind of sort of do with like an empty mag and like hit the bottom of it and then drop the mag.
What I do for the reloads is in my warm up, I do briquette reloads where I'll tap the bottom of the gun with the empty mag.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, because I'm a big believer in visualization for athletic training, right?
Yes.
So if for nothing else, even if it's not really any better than conventional dry fire, if it helps you visualize better, it's still better than conventional dry fire.
And there's a sound component to too as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like for reloads, like in a stage, I will go to the mag in my belt and get a proper grip on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then visualize that I'm pulling it out, but not actually pull it out and act like I'm inserting it. But that's only going to work if you've got a good visualization in your head that you're doing that.
Yes. If you already have all the efficiency and experience of knowing what that feels like and what you can do, then yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And I mean, obviously you still need to do real reloads with your real gun and dry fire and real draws with your real gun and dry fire, of course. But I like the fact that I can get reps on those things in the VR setup too, in a way that's still productive, I believe.
Yes. I like showing it to friends to show like, hey, here's stuff that you can do. And I think one of the probably one of the most underutilized things is seeing the people's recordings of it. The show, like, hey, high performance is achievable by mere mortals, right? You don't have to be, a military ex-SWAT guy to shoot well, right? You can just be a normal guy. And this is what it looks like, though. And that's the most important thing is people do not, like, if you never shot a 2-second bill drill, people do not have that mental library of what it looks like, what the gun looks like under recoil. But for this, it's like, dude, just shoot. Just see what happens if you slap the trigger 6 times, or watch someone else's recording of what it looks like, and
Yeah.
that can help add to the mental library. Like you're watching somebody, a high performer, move on the range, and you try to match that. So I really think that part is underutilized. Watching what people see with, like, actually behind the gun and recording that.
As a side note, that is the reason why I'm happy that it is now popular to post videos of first person views
Yeah,
from matches, because that enables me to like really go through and be like, okay, that transition, I like that transition. You went right to a mini popper at 15 yards and that dot stopped right on it.
right.
Like that's what I want my transitions to look like, and being able to see those things. And I think that if we can, another thing I've been geeking out on lately is the mental game, right?
Right.
If we can see ourselves doing those things in great detail, assuming we have put in the work physically, they will become a reality.
Yes.
But you got to be able to see it.
I think for anybody who's done anything great, they like winning the Olympics, or heck, just getting a job promotion or whatever, or making sure that your kid gets into college, whatever it is. You have to imagine it first, right? You can't just say, oh, I won this out of the blue. A surprise can, that can feel like surprise, but you can't not imagine yourself holding the trophy or the success, and then seeing how other people did it will then like give you that free, myelination in your brain, or whatever the fancy word is, give you that free experience into that.
So I have a thought, and I want to hear your thought on this as a fellow guy that likes to do deep dives on things.
Yeah.
So I don't, and I am not a mental game expert by any means, right? But I am trying to get better at it. I don't think it is valuable to visualize yourself holding the trophy.
Okay.
Because that's an external goal.
Okay.
Now I could be wrong. I'll have to ask, Steve Anderson or somebody, but I would think that if you visualize the parts of the process that are required to have you perform at that level, I mean, you can't choose who has a better day or a worse day through random chance on that day.
Right. That could just be that the one day that your screws fall off your dot because you didn't torque
right.
the rod last
right.
6 months ago.
Whatever. Right.
Yeah.
But what you can control is your ability to run the process.
Yes.
So I think, and maybe I could be wrong. Like I said, I'm going to have to ask some people that know more about this than me now and see if I can confirm my thoughts on this. But like, I've noticed that like I'm focusing more on visualizing the process, visualizing the transitions, visualizing the reloads, visualizing the draws, visualizing what it looks like to come in hard on a position, but have the sight stable. Right. And the other thing I've been trying to do in matches lately is I've always, and this is, I think, one of the pitfalls of having done what I did for a living, is I don't really visualize on the walkthroughs like I should, or at least I didn't used to.
Okay.
Because I was always just like, well, okay, I got the plan. Let's go. Let's hit the house. Right.
Yeah.
What I've been really trying to do lately, and what I'm trying to get good at, is visualizing in such great detail that I'm seeing the dot lift from the right part of the target on every single target on the stage when I visualize it.
You're calling your shots before you
shoot them.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm trying to visualize looking at the point I want my feet to be at on the fault line when I run in.
Yeah.
And then feeling the ball of my foot on the fault line, but not touching the ground outside, while I'm visualizing the sights coming in stable. I'm not saying I can do it yet, but this is what I'm working on.
I got 2 questions for you. Do you also visualize an ace?
I do.
Okay, here's an interesting question. So when you visualize an ace versus visualizing real life, when you visualize an ace, do you imagine the 3D gun or the model, or versus in real life, do you imagine your real gun? Like, do your visualization?
I imagine my real gun in both.
In both.
Yeah.
Okay. So you imagine. Okay.
When I'm shooting an ace, I don't even really pay attention to the virtual gun.
Right.
I'm just paying attention to the dot.
Okay.
You
You're
know,
only
or
aware.
or
Yeah.
for coarser shots, you know, the outline of the housing, you know, whatever, but the sight picture.
Only the yeah. So for you, for the visualization ace, as much as you can, it's only the relationship of the dot or sights to the target visually.
Right.
Because it's kind of, I don't know how to really visualize when I was moving in 3D space or in virtual space. Because like you can look at the sticks, but it
Oh,
feels like
you know
carpet.
what? Actually, when I visualize for the real thing,
Okay.
all I'm visualizing is the dot.
The dot and the dot lifting or the dots in relationship to the targets.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So
So I'm not visualizing unless it's like a coarse sight picture. Like then I'll
yeah,
visualize the
no,
shape
yeah,
of the
yeah,
gun. Yeah.
yeah.
But
We'll just say sights. I get what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah, but like I'm visualizing just the sights. I'm not visualizing seeing the gun.
Okay.
And what's interesting is I just picked up a PCC controller for Ace.
Yeah. I saw that. It looks pretty slick.
It's pretty slick. But what you actually see in the game is the gun closer to your face and higher up than it normally would be.
Yeah.
And it doesn't bother me a bit because I'm just looking for the dot.
Okay. So the dot's just close to your eye and it's got the bigger optic. I mean
Yeah.
the bigger, huge housing.
Yeah. So the fact that it's a staccato P in the game
yeah.
instead of a PCC doesn't even phase me until I try to do a reload. I haven't gotten that yet.
That's fair.
But
Okay.
I'm working on it. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder how deep and detailed a whole bunch of other excellent, awesome shooters also go. Because that's a really cool point that like you're trying to see the relationship of your sights, or you're being aware of where your sights are essentially, and calling exactly where they need to be. And to get that, you need to visualize and feel where your feet need to be. That and then of course for different types of targets, you probably need to have a feeling component as well for head boxes at 20 yards. But my God, for most modern USPSA stages, just slap the trigger twice. Um, hmm.
Yeah. And honestly, like visualizing the trigger press for me
Yeah.
when I'm visualizing a stage on my walkthrough and I'm trying to visualize the dot, I don't visualize the feel of the trigger press. I visualize, I don't even know how to articulate it. It's like, it's still visual through the dot.
So you're
It's,
just this could be the callback to the subconscious thing for earlier. Do you visualize this? The You can steer the trigger. We both know that. But do you visualize the movement of your dot to the way your trigger presses?
yes.
You are translating feel to dot movement or sight movement.
Yeah. And
Okay, so
I wasn't even aware I was doing that until we just talked about it.
that's probably where, and this is kind of clicking for me as well. This is probably where that subconscious flicker may come from. Because if you know where your dot needs to be, and you can steer with your trigger, and you're translating feel into sight, then your subconscious can just do that little flick as needed.
Yeah. Which is not something I would recommend to somebody brand new to shooting,
No,
but,
no, yeah, but because
but that's got to be what's going on.
yeah, and be, because the way that you feel your gun, the way that you can feel the way your gun is in your hands, and the way that you know how intimate your dot needs to be or it needs to be on target, you could that you can get away with a slap and trigger. The dot does a little this, but it's still in the A zone versus a nice long traditional trigger press. Your dot doesn't move, and you're translating the press and the grip. Well, the grip should be solid. It should not change. You're translating your trigger press to sights, to dot movement.
Yeah.
Huh.
And I didn't even realize I was doing it until we talked about it just now.
Yeah, and I didn't realize that you could translate between senses like that, but it makes a lot of sense.
No pun intended.
Yeah. Huh.
Well, like, what's the synesthesia?
Yeah.
Gabe's got a fair amount of it.
Yep. Where red feels like a certain color.
Yeah. I have a small little bit of it. I don't have
Okay.
anywhere near as much as Gabe.
Yeah.
For me, it's like certain colors and textures smell a certain way. Don't
Okay.
ask me
I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can feel it. Yeah.
It's real minor, right? It's very, very minor. Like I hardly, like every once in a while I'll notice it and I'll be like, oh, okay. You know,
The green tastes weird or whatever, right? You're like,
yeah.
what are you talking about? Like, it just does, dude.
So I'm wondering if there's some correlation to what I just talked about and the ability to cross-reference sensory inputs in your brain.
It might be. I'd love to get Gabe on and talk about that, or to watch you talk with Gabe about that. Because that's if I do have, I don't know if I have that. But I feel like with the experience and the massive amounts of trigger presses and dots that you've seen, you have this whole essentially spreadsheet of data in your brain that you connected. That slap on trigger with bad grip means less. Slap on trigger, with good grip means that your dot moves less. Slap on trigger with an excellent grip means your dot moves just this much. And you've corrected, you've had probably millions of trigger presses and millions of observable awareness of what your sites did, and you just cross-reference them together to the point where if you have this input, the talk about engineering Excel stuff, your dot should look like this. Therefore, visualization is just the backwards input. If my dot does this, I know it will do this. Therefore, my trigger press needs to be a press or a slap or a controlled press, whatever people want to talk about, because it's just all trigger motion to the rear. And then probably a little bit of sprinkling of synesthesia seasoning will allow you to be more
mutable, more
yes.
easily mutable. Yeah.
Yes, more easily meldable. Yeah.
We just hit a deep geek dive. There's going to be people out there holding their heads right now, and that's okay. They'll figure it out.
Yeah, they're going to be on the treadmill. It's like, what? Oh my god! Sorry about that, but that's.
But I really think there's something here, though, because it simplifies the visualization process.
Yeah.
And this is a relatively recent thing for me because I was not trying to visualize in this great of detail prior to like the last year, right? And that's always been one of my weaknesses in matches, to be honest. So, and I know that, so I've been working on it really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just kind of what I love how Frank Proctor, my buddy Frank, always talks about how the sub kind of figure it out if you give it the right data. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And this, I think, is one of those cases. My subconscious is figuring something out, which is pretty cool.
And to extract that into words, that's beyond feeling and sight and like mind stuff. That's where it's like, I don't know how to talk about this, but I can, like, if we could mind meld, that'd be the easiest way to do it. So there is something there.
Yeah, no, I'm going to be exploring this a lot.
Yeah.
Because and the more things, and really, like, remember how I even mentioned it, something else I said about the visualization is the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Visualizing, I can't even pronounce the word with that extra syllables. Visualizing coming in hard to a position, but the site's being stable.
Yeah.
That is visual shorthand again for the kinesthesia of being kind of smoothing your movement out.
Of the body movement, because if your sights are all like this and you're clomping your way through the stage, that's a no-go. But if you visualize your sights gliding in, you're intentionally, you know how your body works. You lived in it for however long you've been alive. It's going to break, which you know how your body works. Your body's going to break. That's how your sights move. Not that it's all vision, as we discussed before, but vision drives how your body feels.
Vision's the driver, though. Vision is the driver.
Yes, vision drives how your trigger feel and your body movement. And so if you visualize yourself running your butt off to the other position, or not even running your butt off, getting your gun up there as soon as you can, you got to sprint there. So why wouldn't you match that in your brain?
This is good stuff.
This is
cool. This is really good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're giving me something to think about in my training sessions the next week or two.
This is something I'm going to explore, because it's melding it all into, like, yes, it's all sight, it's all trigger, it's all grip, and you have good instructors at different levels, right? And they all have things called cues, where some people can be like, you have to do this X or Y or Z, or you have to prep the trigger or slap the trigger, or blah 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 blah, right? And as you move along to where, like, to harken back to our discussion, it's all just shooting. all becomes, it all makes a lot of sense why some guy says X or Y or Z. Another guy says what feels like might be diametrically opposed. But then you understand that, oh, this guy has a different context and he has a heck of a lot more experience. So the way that his trigger moves is different than one guy who's like, hey, I'm here to teach beginners. I'm here to teach you trigger prep or whatever. Not that that's beginner move or anything, but it's just to the point where if you can't feel your trigger through your sights, it's hard to communicate. It's hard to communicate to yourself or your students. And maybe I'm rambling now.
No, I think I'm doing a blog post on this.
Yeah.
This is good stuff. Speaking of writing,
Yeah.
you, I think, my friend, should get everybody's permission first, of course.
Mhm.
But if you thought about consolidating your notes into a book,
I thought about it.
There'd be certain things you shouldn't give away, obviously, from people's
Right.
classes. So it'd be like the public versions of the notes, not the private versions.
Yeah. I thought about it, and I'd really like to do that. I'm trying to make this all free as much as I can because my God, shooting is inexpensive, and then if you have a 2-day class and then ammo and driving and hotels, that's a lot of money. If I can just give a snapshot of the class as good as I can for people who like reading, I think that can help out. But I would love to publish a book. Because there's a point where a lot of my notes now are the nuances and discussions of the techniques of why this person is speaking it, and sometimes some diametrically opposed, like one guy says this, the other guy says this, and that's good to have that discussion. I'd like to do that. I need to go get permission, hopefully, from I think I have 8 sets of notes. There's going to be a 9th one out soon. I'd like to do that, and hopefully that can help some people out because it's cool to publish, and everything now is about the size of Prisoner of Azkaban. It's going to be a chunky size book.
Well, you've got my permission. So
thank you.
You have one permission
One
slip
guy.
already signed.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Huzzah.
you're off to a start.
Yeah. And then do self-publish on Amazon or something.
Yeah. No, we'll talk about it offline because that's how I did it. So
yeah,
I'm happy to tell you about it. What would you give people as your takeaways from the classes you've done notes on? Like not each class, but like as overall takeaways, like total takeaway and the whole thing.
Overall takeaways about shooting or about learning or just in general?
All of the above.
All about the above. Okay.
Or any of the above.
Yeah. So the number one thing is shooting is a journey. Wherever you are currently, in whatever context you are, you can always be better. To do that, it's usually easier to find a mentor or a coach that you can copy from. But at a certain point, you have to go beyond them. And that is a joy to do. And it's kind of scary in some regards. The first person I ever took a shooting course from was Masada Yu, the guy, right? And because of my context of being a book collector, I thought I was a good shooter when I met him. And I think I got the $5 bill from him and everything's like, great. There's this new guy got sketches. I'll go take his course. And when I took his course, it's like, oh. So shooting is absolutely a journey. The number 2 thing I would recommend is get good training from good people who are get good training from good people. There's a lot of people out there and who are good teachers. Good people, good training, good teachers. A lot of the people that I try to associate with have done a lot of really cool stuff. You, of course, right? They've done some cool guy stuff that may or may not have an impact upon who they are. You need to find someone who's a good teacher, though, because you can have a guy who can shoot well, but if he can't teach, then you're just paying $600 to hear war stories. Which, if that's what you want to do to support the guy, okay, that's cool. But if you want to learn, you need to find somebody who can teach. And a good person is going to be humble, and they're going to help you. There are some people out there who have these ginormous egos because they did a lot of cool stuff, but they're not going to be the best as somebody who's probably a little more humble, who can actually still shoot and help you along. So shooting is a journey. Find good people who can teach well. What was the third thing was that I said? And third, take notes. You really need to take notes because, my God, it's a class. It's usually $600 class. you need to refer back to those notes, even if it's something as, it's like pinky pressure. Great. The better notes that you take, the more that you'll learn. Let's see. So that'd be about what I can say for now. Like,
So I've got a comment on the last one you said. Actually,
yeah,
on all of them, really.
yeah,
I'll start with the last one first, though, because it's the one that popped up in my head. I will never forget being told as a very young martial artist that to truly be good at something like martial arts, which shooting is a martial art,
absolutely.
you needed to not just be a practitioner of the craft, but a scholar of the craft, a
I agree.
student in that sense, like in the academic sense. And I've really always kind of held that to be true throughout my life. And like, that's why, like, I have stuff like McGivern's book on revolver shooting on my bookshelf.
Hmm.
It's not so much that everything in there is directly relatable to my style of shooting today, but there's principles and comments and things in there that do resonate and that are
Yes.
important to know and think about. Or like things like I've been geeking out lately on historical European martial arts.
Okay.
No real practical value, right?
Mhm.
But there's principles in there that are helping me figure things out about shooting. Because principles of movement don't change, just the way you express them based on the environment, the desired end state, and the tools you're using.
Mhm.
That's what changes things.
Yes. People are a system. Most people have 2 hands and 2 legs and typically one head, right? And you typically, for martial arts, want to either defend yourself or impart violence on the other thing that also has 2 arms and 2 legs, typically, right? Once you find out a good system to use, you need to modify that system to the way that you think and the way that you approach shooting and the way that your hands and tools are. And
100%.
and people have been, my God, using violence and tools against each other for as long as we've been alive. Someone in the past has figured this out. So having a historical context of going all the way back to Shooting to Live or Ed McGivern's book or Rex Applegate's stuff, and not getting hung up on this is the way they shoot in World War II. By God, we got to do it. But understanding why they did that and finding out how people have built upon that will only serve to make you a better shooter, 100%.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's a lot of it is about understanding things at the principle level.
Mhm.
And how that is modified and how that impacts. And like you're talking about, someone's physiognomy, right? Their body.
Mhm.
Like most people have thumbs that oppose. I, on the other hand, am the missing link, right? So my shooting grip is drastically different than most people's because of that,
Yes,
right? There's things about my grip I would not tell people to do because of that.
right.
My good friend Bob Vogel, phenomenal. Just I could someday hope to be 1/10 the shooter he is. He's amazing. But I don't grip a gun the way he does because we have very different body types,
Yeah,
very different hands, right? Our mutual friend Tim Herron, fantastic shooter.
right.
There's no way he's going to grip a gun like my orangutan ass does.
It'd be impossible.
It's just not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
And I think that one of the dangers, one of the traps we fall into is imitation as a path to mastery without truly understanding what we're imitating or why.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. It's where people will find a guy and be like, I'm going to shoot exactly like this guy. They buy all the gear, they buy the guns, but they buy the holsters. And you know what? They get the guy's grip. Here's a good metaphor I have to describe about that. So like if you're going for a destination, from Dallas all the way to, I don't know, Jackson, Mississippi, hopefully not there, Georgia, we'll say that. If you're following one guy who's driving a car, you can only follow that guy at that guy's speed. And that car might not even fit you. You can be a huge guy getting a small car or a small, person going to a semi. At some point, you got to speed past that guy. To do that, it's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to make mistakes. You might even crash or get caught by the cops, right? But you need to find your own way past that guy. They can be an awesome. They could show you a lot of awesome things, and they can help you along your path. But there's a point where it's like, okay, you need to cock your wrist more or less, and that's only on you to be aware of what you're doing during practice, and then test it in live fire and see whether it works.
which brings us back to that observer inside your head and how important that is.
Here's something maybe to add on too. The main point of being observer is seeing, right? Just like shooting. If you're not seeing or not being aware, then I guess what are you doing in life? Right?
Yeah, no, very true. So second thing I thought of from your 3 points
Mhm.
is that I think people misunderstand this a lot. The ability to teach is a difficult skill, and it is a skill separate from the skill being taught.
I agree.
And not, and this actually kind of ties into your make sure they're good people thing.
Mhm.
It is the more ego you have, the harder it is to teach well.
I agree. I agree.
You've got to just kind of, things are what they are, right? The universe is what it is. You are who you are. Things are what they are. It doesn't mean it's not mutable. Doesn't mean you can't change it. But the more I am invested in trying to appear a certain way, the less I am invested in trying to help my students progress.
Yes. Teaching is about serving, which means you must put the other person first. And if you can't do that because of who you view yourself as, you can be an awesome, phenomenal shooter, world champion. But if you can't put others first and teach, then really what are you imparting onto them? What are you giving them? You're just giving them a class on how to cosplay well effectively. Look how cool I am, or you're giving them essentially a YouTube video, without the computer. And some people like that. I'm here to learn though, and um,
Well, and if people enjoy that, that's fine.
yes,
Like that's
absolutely, yeah,
100% fine. But
yeah,
for
totally,
me, it's about figuring things out, right? And
yep,
then putting them into practice.
yes. It's of course, like sometimes it's good to like support. Like I like Gabe. Gabe's an awesome guy. I like going to his class. Like he's
Oh
just I
yeah,
like hanging out with him. Yeah,
I
um,
love Gabe.
yeah. Uh, and am I past the point where Gabe's class may not serve me? I don't know. I always love learning from Gabe though, and I just love being with him. He's such a good, honest, humble guy that teaches people.
He is both a fantastic instructor and a great person,
Yes.
which those two do not always go together, like we said earlier.
Yeah.
And so for the first thing you said, right, about it being a journey,
Yes.
I think this goes back to, are people process focused or results focused? And I think the more you focus, and this is like the whole samurai riddle, right? You know, the warrior that is desperate to not die winds up dying because that's
Yeah.
all they can think about.
Yeah.
You know, whereas the guy who thinks about winning winds up living because he thought about winning, not about whether he was going to live or die.
Yeah.
You know, not being reckless, but you know what I mean.
No,
You
I
get the
yeah.
general gist, yeah. And I think it's kind of the same thing. I think it's kind of like, well, you know, I got to be Area 4 champion, or you know, like all these external focus goals. When I think if you just really learn a good process for yourself for your training, the goals you are capable of achieving will come for you.
Yeah.
I think.
Yes. I won a couple of different patches, and every time I hold that patch, I was like, "That's cool. Put this in his pocket. What's next?" And it's
Yeah.
not that what's next and like what's the next stop. No, what's the next thing that I can see? What's the
Yeah.
next
What's the
mountain
next
that
thing
I?
you can work on? Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And it's so fun to do that. And that's the journey. It's always like maybe I'll do competition this year and really want to do well in it, and and meet a lot of new friends. For some people, though, I think they view shooting as I'm going to go to this guy's class and now I am good, or I won this patch or trinket, now I am good. I
Yeah,
want
there's no
to,
steady state in nature. There's no stasis. Either you're
y-
growing or you're degrading.
yeah, and
All right,
and
hold that thought. I got to take a break real quick. I
yeah,
will
yeah,
be
yeah.
right back.
Sounds good.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, hey, it happens.
All right. So I think that's probably, I mean, this is all still going to be edited out, but that's probably a pretty good place to wrap it up, I think, because I think we kind of summed up some good stuff.
Yeah.
So I'll just, I'll lead off asking you where people can get a hold of you, and we'll just kind of wrap it up from there.
Okay.
Does that
Sounds
work?
good.
All right.
Yeah.
No, I think you're right. I think that, if we look at all of this stuff, like, because for me, like the joy in this isn't the arriving, right? That's not the joy in it. I find joy in the act of getting up and dry firing, of going to the range and shooting. Like, I think if you don't enjoy the process, it's probably not the pursuit you should be doing the deep dive in, you know?
Yeah.
And that's okay too. You can find something else. But I think that everybody who's truly good at something enjoyed the process of getting there,
Yeah. You have
because
to.
you can't sustain it otherwise, I don't
Yeah.
think.
I agree. It's
All right. So where can people find your writings and your notes? How do they
yeah.
find that?
Yeah. So I have two things. Predominantly the Instagram and Facebook. My handles are Gunpowder and Paper on Instagram, and Gunpowder space and Paper on Facebook, because I couldn't figure it out. Sorry, that's my bad. So probably the easiest one is just Instagram. Underneath my links and the cool shooting page, because you have to have that in 2025, are a link to a Google Drive that has all my public postings for free. I've got 8 things out, all the way from I got Mag 40 legal stuff, Masada U, Graveyard Actual, and harder classes that are kind of hard to get into, kind of like stuff from SLG, who now runs pistol-training.com, Justin Dial, and Tim Heron and AJ, good guys like that. There's right now about 336 pages available, so hopefully there'll be some good information to have. And if you can't reach me, just send me a message on Instagram or Facebook, and maybe we can talk.
Yeah, and I would definitely recommend anybody who's into shooting in the way that you and I are,
Mm-hmm.
that you should definitely check out this guy's notes, because they're very well written, they're very concise, easy to understand. Plus I have a soft spot for it because he made me sound really cool in the notes. So I've really enjoyed our chat. I feel like this is one of those where we could have gone for another 2 hours probably and not run out of things to talk about. So, which means we got to do part 2. That's all.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed the conversation and our deep dive into geeking out over performance and shooting as much as we did. Hope you guys got something positive out of the episode, and I will talk to everybody again soon. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Way is in Training. Please come back again as we explore how training makes us better at our craft and better in our everyday lives. See all of you soon.